running his mouth again. Anthony Jeselnik is a comic. As a comic, I love Anthony Jeselnik. I think he's one of the greats, honestly, of his generation. There are now some things that detract from that. You know, you have to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah.
Because this guy thinks he's the gatekeeper and the arbiter of comedy now, which is fine. Anthony Jeselnik's at a level where I suppose he can do that. He can pontificate about whatever he wants. But he always seems to do it in such an odd way. Like, even this, there are points he's making that I kind of agree with, but the forum for which he chooses to make these arguments is hysterical to me. I don't know if maybe it's a bit that I'm missing, that he's being completely hypocritical on purpose. But let's get into it. He had a lot to say. He's out promoting his special, but this is on his podcast, the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project. So I guess they took 2 months off or something. So he came back and had a lot to say after the election and everything that was going on in comedy. So let's dive in here.
Apologies for being off for so long. I feel like we could have changed the outcome of the election if we had been here. I know a lot of podcasters got involved. Notice I said podcasters. I did not say comedians.
Whoa.
A lot of podcasters got involved.
Burn.
Look, if you have a presidential candidate or a major politician on your show and you do not fuck with them in any way, you're a podcaster. You're not a comedian. If you cancel an entire weekend of shows...
I actually get that, but I think I would say Theo Vaughn did fuck with Donald Trump. I know that's probably not who he's talking about, but like, look at what Theo Vaughn was doing. So I guess that's a comedian, right? Or does that not count?
I think he's talking about Rogan, right?
Of course he is. Well,
Or
there's some other-
Schultz. Schultz, maybe?
Schultz, but I think there's also someone else he's talking about too. Someone he's kind of taken digs at before. And I think I may know why. He's about to get into that.
The very last second.
Yeah, one or the other. Who's this next clip here?
Oh, okay. Well, he talks about like canceling gigs to interview JD Vance. So I think he's talking about Tim Dillon also. Because Tim Dillon's the only guy that traveled. I don't think he was in his studio when he interviewed JD Vance.
Oh, that's yeah.
So it's got to be Tim Dillon that he's talking about too. He's taken shots at Tim Dillon before. So I think that he has an issue with the Legion of Skanks guys. He trashed Shane Gillis when he got fired. So I don't think he likes that circle of comedy. Anthony has his people that he associates with and respects, and those are the only guys he thinks are real comics, which is a little odd to me. Like, say what you want about like Hinchcliffe's career or his comedy, but like, you can't deny what he's built. His podcast is massive, and even if you don't think what he did at the Trump rally was funny, it was stand-up. You know what I mean? Like, he was telling jokes regardless of what you thought of it. Like, that's the weird thing to me, is he's mad that like these guys interviewed them seriously, but he'll go on Mark Maron's podcast. He's legitimately doing it. He says on this episode, he's like, I'll only do certain podcasts, like I'm going on Maron. Well, no one tell Anthony. Mark Maron interviewed Barack Obama while he was president.
That's going to be a can't miss episode of Shit Talk.
Mark Maron, definitely. Mark Maron had a radio show on Air America where he talked serious politics. So is he not a comedian, Anthony? Are you going to tell him that to his face? Like, can you only have funny discussions? Because oddly, this is a serious conversation on a podcast that you're having. That's the hilarious thing to me. He's like, well, if you say serious shit on a podcast, you're a podcaster, not a comedian. Where are you doing this, Anthony? Look around you. There are microphones and a desk. You're on a podcast.
And by the way,
to tell you, this is on YouTube.
This conversation you're having is so funny.
Oh, it's hysterical.
I was in stitches listening to this thing.
But like, I see his point. It is weird that we're in a time of comedy where like Joe Rogan will have a serious conversation with. But I would also say this, like, no matter how Joe defines himself, like I think Joe would say he's a stand-up and then everything else.
Yep.
Joe Rogan has made $400 million from podcasting.
But he's also
he's a podcaster. He is.
He's been doing the same thing for like 15 years straight. It has not changed.
That's the thing, is everyone is mad that Rogan has influence. Well, have as much influence as Joe Rogan, and you won't have to worry about it.
That's right.
Like, does Rogan think he's smarter than he is? Probably.
Does he also think that the
Most
president?
human beings do.
Does he also think that Trump would have gone on his show?
No, I don't think so.
Because he's like, we could have changed the election.
Oh, he was
Like,
kidding. He was kidding.
No, I know, but like to even remotely put himself in that sphere is crazy.
Yeah. He was kidding, to be fair, but
Yeah. Was he? Listen to the rest of this and tell me. Was he?
Let's find out.
And listen, if you're making $200 million a year, who do you work for?
I wonder who that's about.
That's what I'd love to know. Who do you work for
Spotify.
once you have fuck you money? Because you work for someone.
Spotify.
And I think it's weird.
Pretty simple.
And it's not comedian-like. There's podcasters. There are comedians.
Anthony, I got to tell you, Jerry Seinfeld worked for NBC. David Letterman worked for NBC and CBS. Like, people worked places. Ray Romano worked for CBS. I'm sorry to tell you.
I don't know. This
All
guy
these
might.
places.
He might work for Netflix coming up in a week or so.
Oh yeah, no. I guess Anthony's turning down all that corporate money. He probably did
Yeah.
it for free.
That's right. This is coming out on YouTube for free.
This is, and I said this about Bo Burnham, who I love. It is interesting to have these songs about corporate greed and how terrible these billionaires are and how the internet is ruining the world, and you put that on Netflix and accept their money. You know what I mean? Like, you can have these opinions. Where are you doing this, Anthony? You have a problem with Rogan, you're taking Netflix money. You have a problem with podcasters that you're venting on your podcast. So, I don't know. Maybe Anthony's doing a very meta bit, but it seems a little hypocritical.
Well, if he came out and was like, he's not a comedian because his last special was ass, I'd be like, yeah, all right, you got a point.
Sure, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to just shit on their jokes, that's fine. But like, Joe Rogan is a podcaster, no matter how he defines himself. Anyone would say, I know Joe Rogan most from the Joe Rogan Experience.
For sure.
So what? What does that mean?
A lot of people are stunned to find out he does stand up.
Again, there are people, I mean, because of the way the show is, everyone knows, and he's such a massive star now, obviously. But like, there were people that knew Jerry Seinfeld from his sitcom. That's not
Right.
stand-up. You know, like it is different technically. Sometimes comedians get famous doing other things, talk shows or television shows, and this generation it just happens to be podcasts or where they make their money. If you strictly wanted to get into acting as a comic, that would be a pretty dumb move because it's just not happening now. It's not how careers are made anymore. Podcasting is. And Rogan is a guy you can think. The reason Anthony Jeselnik has a podcast is because Rogan created that model. And Marin and Adam Carolla and guys like that. But
Patrick Ford says, as a Jeselnik super fan, this hurts to watch.
well, I like Jeselnik too, but go watch anything he's done. And again, Anthony, if you want to not be hypocritical about it, maybe a guy who's playing a character on stage shouldn't do a podcast at all. Even if it's comedic or whatever, you shouldn't do a character on stage and then take the mask off and have actual conversations. If you want to be true to the art, man. Because I like Jeselnik too, but every time he opens his mouth in this format, he's dumping on Shane Gillis without having any idea who he was.
Right.
Completely, like, essentially contributing to trying to tank the guy's career when he got fired from SNL. Anthony reposts articles that call the Legion of Skanks and Tim Dillon neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
That's
without
right.
Without reading it, supposedly. He said he didn't read it, and he retweeted it. So Anthony does this shit all the time. He comes out half-cocked making these points, and there are some points I think Anthony makes that are good, but he always steps in this, and it's purely based on biases and who he likes. It's not about, he's trying to make it seem like it's about the art, brother. It's about the craft of comedy. He's just a purist. But it's really just, it's guys he doesn't like because of their politics, I guess.
Yeah, it's gross.
And it is, I'll say this about Tim Dillon. I think Tim Dillon is hilarious. I think he's a good broadcaster. I think if you want to say his interview with J.D. Vance was too serious, that's fine. But I think overall, Tim Dillon is very funny. And I think that Tim Dillon is also a guy who is openly gay and been able to make a career out of that, even though he doesn't fit certain stereotypes. His audience was able to accept him as an edgy, offensive guy, guy who crosses the line type of comedian, even though he was openly gay and comfortable with that. So
Well,
I
it's
don't know.
probably.
I don't know if
probably-
Anthony's jealous of that. Keep interrupting me, please.
Sorry.
I don't know if Anthony's jealous of that for any particular reason.
I think
know what
I think people are accepting of him in a broad sense because he looks like a construction worker and sounds like he smokes 2 packs.
Yeah,
a
I
day.
don't know if there's any reason that Anthony would be like jealous of a guy like that who's just like comfortable in his own skin and acknowledges who he is.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, I'm just like, it is like if you have a certain persona on stage, you might think that you can't admit certain things about yourself. A guy like Tim Dillon's totally comfortable with that. Other people aren't. So I could see like maybe being jealous of Tim Dillon if you were in a situation where you weren't comfortable admitting everything about yourself.
And I don't think they're mixing anymore. I think you're one or the other.
That worries
So
me about.
because Theo Vaughn had Trump on his podcast and was like, "Oh man, you feel like a rattlesnake on methamphetamine or whatever the fuck he was saying,
Cocaine.
like a dirt serpent from hell."
Yeah.
Because Theo Vaughn did that, he's like not a comic anymore. He has to turn in his microphone.
Right.
It's so silly.
The future of the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project. JRVP.
Junior
Oh, hold
Vice
on.
President.
I'm sorry.
That
Is
was
this a wacky podcast bit?
Yes, it is.
Did the wacky meter go off, Anthony? Rewind this, please. What is Anthony telling every comedian they have to do right before he launches into a silly bit that they do? If you don't listen to Anthony Jeselnik's podcast, every time they say the name of the podcast, Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project, they then whisper JRVP. And then the girl goes, Junior Vice President. I don't know why. I get that that's what those initials could stand for. I don't know what makes it funny, but it is a thing that they do on this podcast every time they do a podcast. So again, Anthony, tell us exactly how to separate broadcasting versus comedy before you launch into your wacky gimmick.
One or the other. I think you're one or the other.
That worries me about the future of the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project. JRVP.
Junior Vice President.
We'll get into that in
Listen, I think you either got to decide, are you a comedian or a broadcaster? Anyways, we've got 2 tickets to Guns N' Roses later. See if you can identify the phrase that pays, and you've got a shot to win those. The fuck you doing, Anthony?
Blind Mike Project. BMP.
Yeah, Anthony's like, hey, listen, there's a dividing line in comedy, and I think some people are taking themselves too seriously. Anyways, there's a gentleman who thinks his wife has been cheating on him, and we're going to get her on the line and tell her that she's won a dozen roses.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys, by the way, if you super chat the words Blind Mike Project, we'll whisper BMP.
Yeah.
Just keep that in
Yeah,
mind.
listen, Joe Rogan's just got to accept that he's a podcaster. It is 2 for Tuesday here on the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project.
It's time for a James game.
notes.
Fucking cornball.
But I can give you a spoiler. I took the word podcaster out of my bio.
No!
Wow.
We're all fucked.
What are we watching then?
Hey, you know what, Anthony? I did too. Unfortunately, I'm still on a podcast. It's the damnedest thing.
Wow.
I took the word podcaster out of my bio. I did not, however, stop doing podcasts. I'm hosting one right now, but it's not in my bio, so you can't really tell that I'm doing a podcast.
Yep. Right.
How insane is this to bitch about podcasting on a podcast?
No kidding. At least do it on radio.
I do hate. I've talked about guys I like a lot, like Stavros and Dan Soder, the guys I'm a big fan of. They bitch about podcasting so much, and they're like, "Oh man, I wish I could. I just hate it. I wish I didn't have to do this." It's like, well, don't do it. What am I listening to?
Right.
I'm listening to you because I'm a fan of yours, and I think you do good stuff. Why are you mad at me for listening? I don't understand it. It's this weird like guilt they have. Because they think fucking Carlin and Lenny Bruce would have called them hacks.
They absolutely would have had podcasts. We've gone over that before.
Of course. Lenny Bruce would be an MSNBC commentator.
No shit. And like,
It's just the time you live in. Accept it.
yeah. But next we have him talking about Rogan.
Or, by the way, don't. David Tell doesn't have a podcast. Colin Quinn doesn't have a podcast. You don't have to have one of these, Anthony.
It's very true.
And he does that. He's like, oh, well, I don't want to. I don't like pod. I do it with my friend. So does everyone. So, what do you think
Thanks,
the Legion
buddy.
of Skanks started as?
That makes me feel more welcome.
You don't do it with a complete stranger. You do it with a buddy of yours.
So we got Rogan now.
Okay, so now he's being a little more direct.
Specific, yes.
Yeah.
Of faith. But then I think once the special comes out, I think I'm going to get a lot more requests. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what I want to go on. I may have gone on Rogan before just to have the conversation. I don't think I would now.
Why? So you're a coward? You don't believe in... You don't stand for anything you believe in?
That's such a weird thing to say.
Why would you do this then? Like, I get if you're like, hey, I don't want to go on Rogan because I have certain things I would need to, if I'm going to be on that podcast, I'd need to talk to him about these things that I don't agree with.
He would have that conversation, though.
Of course, no, but how about let me finish one of these thoughts?
Sorry. You know how I feel.
You know, breathing room.
You know how I feel about these libs.
Boy, do I. It's one thing to be like, I'm not going to go on Rogan because if I went on there, I would have to have these conversations with him, and I don't want to. It would get too serious. And I'm a comic. I'm a light. I try to keep it light. So I don't want to go on there and talk about the vaccine or fucking Kamala or any of this, RFK Jr. I don't want to get into a conversation with that because it's not really my brand. If that's what you said, great, terrific. But what you're doing is trying to play both where you're a tough guy, where you'll come on your podcast and be like, Rogan's a pussy, Rogan's a hack, Rogan's not a real comic. I will not have the conversation with him because he might make points that make me look silly.
Right.
That's what you're doing. You're living life like a scared guy, like possibly a guy that doesn't want to admit everything about himself would live.
I do like how he's like, yeah, if Rogan asked me on, I don't think I would.
Oh, man. It's devastating.
Wow. I don't want to go
again. He's going on Marin.
Right.
He'll do that podcast. It's weird. I can't think of why that might be.
I still think that's pretty cool that Obama went to his garage. I don't
That's
like
great.
Obama, but that was just awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I don't think Marin is not a comedian anymore because he talked to Barack Obama.
Now that fuck montage we played, a little bit tough.
That's weird, but still, he's a comic, you know?
That's true. We're not going to hold that against him.
This is where and I love comics. If you've watched this channel long enough, please subscribe and like and share. If you've watched this channel long enough, you know that I like comedians. I enjoy comedy. What I hate is when they talk about like how civilians can't understand them.
Oh my God.
Or they talk like this and it's like, you have to be a purist, man. It's like, well, you can be a purist and not tell. Again, David Tell doesn't do this shit.
No.
And there's no more respected comedian than him. So do that or give your opinions on a podcast. But don't do the thing where it's like, I'll never give my opinion on a podcast on the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project.
JRVP.
Whoa! Sound the JRVP meter. Cornball.
How mad was Jeselnik that he said that right after he just made that serious point, though?
I know.
You're going to make me whisper this right now?
He Craiged him. Jeselnik's boy, you're really not getting the mood of what I'm saying here.
Next, we have him talking about Hinchcliffe.
Again, he makes some good points here.
Yes.
He's not wrong entirely.
It's the tone.
Yeah.
I think it was very funny. Again, in a way of not the way Tony wanted it to be funny. And no one mentioned that. Everyone's like, that joke was out of bounds, that he shouldn't have done that. I think that as a comedian, especially, I think maybe in all art forms, or maybe in all of life, the most dangerous time for you in your career is right after you've had a big success, because you get real amped up and you want to do it again as fast as you can. I think he did that roast of Tom Brady and got real high on himself. And again, I'm not going to like point you to the interviews, but like Google Tony Hinchcliffe interview.
I don't
in the past,
disagree
like,
with
4
this.
months.
This is correct. Like Tony has a certain level of self-importance. I agree with that.
You might call him a bum. Some might.
It's fucking insane how out of control his ego is. And again, like you're a performer, you get that out of control ego, ride the wave, enjoy it. I think he did a bad job of roasting. Like if you were going to, like, let's say if Kamala Harris asked me to open up one of her rallies with a roast, which she would never do.
Right.
Ever. No one would ever ask me.
Because
to do
I might
anything
make
like
a
that.
crib
I'm
death
surprised that they-
joke.
She's a queen.
I'm so edgy. I might say my mom touched me. Whoa, look out for Anthony. Like, Anthony, he's a very edgy comic. He's never once talked about anything real. Like, he'll mention 9/11 and the Holocaust because those are edgy. So Anthony wasn't there. He's not connected to it in any way. It's not real to him. Anthony is an edgy, offensive guy, but it actually is more dangerous. It's a very corny term, but it is more dangerous to do what Tony Hinchcliffe did than what Anthony Jeselnik does. Where Anthony, like everyone gives Anthony Jeselnik credit for being this edgelord. Oh man, you're so dark and twisted. How do you even get away with this stuff? Well, he gets away with it because it's not real. There's not a group for fictional, like the joke in his trailer that he released for his Netflix special is very funny. He said that I don't want to butcher it. It's very funny though. but I realized I was going to get it wrong, so I'm not going to go watch it. I'm sure it's on his Instagram or whatever. But like the person he's talking about in that joke is not a real human being. That's how you get away with it.
Right.
So like if you want to say like you're this dangerous guy and you just understand it more than anyone else, well, you're not talking about anything real. So don't take a victory lap for that. Or technically, I think what Tony did is also less funny than any of Anthony Jeselnik's specials, obviously. But it is, if you want to talk about like edgy, like what Tony did is technically more edgy than anything Anthony Jeselnik has ever done.
Going to a political rally and saying that? Absolutely.
Yes. Going on a Comedy Central roast and making fun of Charlie Sheen is not as dangerous as going to Madison Square Garden and roasting politics in a setting that was not expecting it, you know?
He was the news cycle for a week and a half.
And again, like you can say that's not, comedians shouldn't be mixing with politics. Tell that to every host of every correspondence dinner, including, by the way, like Norm Macdonald, like genuinely respected guys. So you can say like it's not comedy to do that stuff, but it is. If you want to say, I don't think Tony is 1/10 as funny as Anthony Jeselnik.
Correct.
I think Anthony's a much better comic. I don't think it's close. But if you're talking about like what's real comedy, you can't discount what Tony attempted. You know,
Yeah.
it was comedy, whether or not you found it funny.
It was a miscalculation, is all it turned out to be.
I have like on Kill Tony every week. Now the episodes are coming out from that time.
Yeah.
And Tony's like, Google it. There are landfills in Puerto Rico that are overflowing. So, that's what I was talking about. He goes, it's not my fault. You're all dumb. But it actually is very funny hearing him respond to that stuff. But
They asked Tony to do that. I think you would want to roast her opponents.
Right.
Maybe Russia. Not constituents. Not people whose votes you need. Like, it was disastrous.
Tony doesn't need them.
He doesn't.
Tony was doing it for himself. This is where people got confused. Tony was doing it for one man, and it wasn't Donald Trump. He was doing it for Tony Hinchcliffe. He got exactly what he wanted. Now, I think maybe like Tony started getting death threats and shit that he didn't expect, but like Tony did it for the Tony Hinchcliffe brand, and it worked. And I gotta say, by the way, to comedians like Anthony or the people that have canceled on Kill Tony, those aren't real comics. Fuck you. If you called Tony Hinchcliffe scared and bailed on him because he told a fucking Puerto Rico joke, then you're not a real comic. Again, is it funny? I don't know. Like, I didn't particularly laugh at it, but whatever. Is it the right setting for comedy? No, it's pretty weird. But he tried something and followed through with it. And then these comics bail at the last minute. Like, look at Tony's guests the last couple weeks. I think there were a couple last-minute phone calls made.
Yeah.
Wow, Tyler Fisher back on for the second time in a month. You know, I think there were some panicked phone calls because people started bailing. So I'd like to know who those comedians are, because those to me are the not real comics. Those are the scared little pussies, pussy boys, as my friend Stuttering John would say.
From a like of what you chose to joke about. Like, he just did a stand-up set thinking it's like the Tony Hinchcliffe show and just made everybody mad at him. I think it was a terrible venue to do stand.
Yeah, it was a weird venue. Yes, he tried something. That's something Anthony would actually be scared of doing, and Tony tried it. Now, maybe Anthony would wisely be scared of it because it wouldn't be great for Anthony. Like, it would be a weird setting for Anthony to do comedy. Again, the character of Anthony Jeselnik shouldn't be injecting themselves into politics. It's kind of weird that he's doing it now on his podcast.
He missed the boat.
But, like, that would be weird. I wasn't... When I heard that Tony Hinchcliffe was on that rally, I wasn't like, what? It didn't blow my mind.
No.
I was like, oh, that's kind of... It seems like a weird setting for comedy, but that seems like something Trump would try.
Well, I mean, he was doing it in front of like all our parents and grandparents. That was the audience, basically.
Yeah. And again, he did it for one man. He did it for Tony Hinchcliffe. He didn't do it to get Donald Trump more votes.
Right.
He did it so a few more people would watch Kill Tony and be like, who the fuck is this guy?
And you know who wasn't upset? Puerto Ricans.
Right.
It was everyone else.
Yes. Well, no, it wasn't it. No one was upset by it. Everyone was fine.
Everyone on the
Just
news.
pretended- Yeah.
He acted like he was just doing stand-up at Madison Square Garden, which he was not.
No one was laughing, which I thought that was what you were going to say, was he is there to, in theory, make people laugh. And that wasn't really working either.
I think they were confused. They were like, why is he saying these inflammable things, whatever, that are going to like hurt our chances? I think a lot of that rally was hurting their chances. But again, it did not matter at all. Do I think it's cool to open up a Trump rally? No, I do not. Do I think it's cool to open up a Kamala rally? No, I do not. Neither of those things are cool, especially not Trump. Nothing to do with Trump is cool. And I think he did a bad job of being like, I'm going to kill with these edgy jokes. You're not there for that.
Well, again, I kind of
You were
agree.
there to-
I agree with the sentiment of it is weird that we live in a time where people are like, Trump people do this. Kamala, they call her Mamala and say she's a queen. But Trump people do it in a different way. They're like, he's the fucking man. Like, they talk about him like he's a god. And that is weird that we live in a time where we're doing that with politicians. They're all fucking crooks. They're all stealing from us as best they can. So none of them are cool. I agree with him. But when he says, like, especially not Trump,
That's
then
right.
it's like, oh, this is because you didn't want to vote for him.
I was like,
That's what this is.
he was towing the line of what to say. It's not cool to open up Kamala or Trump. Especially Trump is the problem.
Well, why especially Trump? Why? You know what I mean? Like, why?
I feel like that's where it would work more anyways.
Definitely. You don't think Marin would kill at a Kamala rally? The fuck is wrong with you people? It's just 20-year-old girls. What the fuck is this?
Roast like Minnesota, and you did not do that. You roasted Puerto Rico, who's having a hard time. I love Puerto Rico. I love Puerto Ricans.
Good for you.
So that was my take on that.
He called Luis J. Gomez a white supremacist, so I don't know if he loves all Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, I think he's nitpicking, as they say.
Yes, perhaps. Was that it from Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Anthony took his shots at the boys, and again, I think he makes some points. I don't think it's cool to be involved in politics. I'm not like, oh, that's really cool of Rogan. What is cool is that a comic or a fucking pothead or a UFC announcer can sit down and have a conversation with the president of the United States and ask things that we might ask. That actually is kind of cool.
Yeah,
And
he
it would have
wasn't
been cool if he
unwilling
did
to
it
have
with Kamala.
He was trying to, and she said no. Okay.
Right. Like, that is kind of cool. And again, Joe Rogan has made $400 million from podcasting. He is a podcaster.
Yes.
Anthony Jeselnik has made substantially less money from podcasting. He is a podcaster.
I am.
I would say Craig is a podcaster. I'm a podcaster. Anthony Jeselnik is somewhere in the middle of me and Joe Rogan. But like, you're on a podcast, therefore you're a podcaster. You can wipe it from your bio as much as you can. There's still little remnants there, unfortunately. Keep scrubbing, because I still see it.
That didn't get enough attention. I took it out of my bio. Okay.
Folks, I've removed podcaster from my bio.
Are you sitting down?
Oh my God! I thought I felt a brisk wind traveling through. I thought there was a chill up my spine.
Go to blindmike.net for everything Blind Mike. Look at me. I did it. Kragers did it.